The 4th year with Jack. He grew tired of my dullness and monotony. He was captivated by a young, avant-garde girl, but he told his friends, "It's just a little fling. Of course, I'll still marry a obedient girl like Alicia." The wedding was just around the corner, and everyone urged me to think about the bigger picture. Joshua, the wildest in our circle, stopped me and said, "Obedient girl, dare to rebel for once?" At the wedding 3 days later, Jack saw the hickey on my neck, and he was so angry that he could barely hold onto the bouquet. I smiled faintly. "It's just a little fling. Why are you getting mad?" Though, after trying it, I realized you're quite boring. Not as fun as him. Chapter 1. I had never seen this side of Jack. He was always the gentleman, the well-mannered young master from a prominent family. But now, his shirt buttons were undone, and he was lazily lounging on the sofa. A pretty girl with pink-dyed hair boldly straddled his waist and gave him a passionate kiss. His eyes were glazed with drunkenness, and there was a look of intoxicated lust in them. But at the last moment, he turned his face, just barely avoiding her kiss on his lips, letting it fall on his cheek instead. "Jack, you're playing so wildly. Aren't you afraid Alicia will find out? It's just a little fling." Jack's tone was nonchalant. "Even if she knows, so what? Well, you're about to get married, and the invitations are already sent. She's such an obedient girl, she'll probably just cry a little." Jack lit a cigarette and laughed indifferently. "I know what I'm doing. Of course, I'll marry someone like her. A obedient girl. But the little mistress outside, she has to be charming and full of tricks to be fun." A burst of laughter filled the room, disorderly and chaotic. Jack smirked and pinched the soft, tender cheek of the girl beside him. "Put on your ballet outfit. Show them what you've got." The girl giggled shyly. "But I only want to wear it for you." Jack also smiled, though the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Behave. Don't ruin the mood." The girl pouted and went to change. I stood outside for a while, waiting for someone to answer the phone before I was noticed. "Sister-in-law's here?" "Jack's drunk. He was just talking about you." I took a step back. "I'll stay out here. Don't disturb him while he's watching the dance." The person seemed a bit awkward and didn't say anything for a while. It was probably the first time I had shown any temper, and it took him by surprise. As they said, I was famous in our circle for being the obedient girl. Jack had been causing trouble recently, and everyone had heard about it, but every single one of them, without exception, urged me to endure. Which man isn't a little fickle? At least Jack is thoughtful with you. The wedding is coming up. You have to think about the big picture, about both families' faces. I found it laughable, the face of both families. But should I, the victim, be the one to care about it? You all have your fun. I'm leaving. Sis-in-law. Jack's just killing time with them. Don't follow me. I held back my tears and quickly turned away. But just as I reached the elevator, someone stopped me, wiping my tears. I frowned and looked at the man in front of me. It was Joshua, the notorious playboy in our circle. He was wearing a black windbreaker and matching cargo pants, with a cigarette between his lips. His gaze toward me was bold and a little reckless. In a place full of fine clothes and perfume, his outfit made him stand out. I had heard many unpleasant rumors about him. Instinctively, I took a step back, keeping my distance from him. "Obedient girl." Joshua took the cigarette out of his mouth and raised an eyebrow at me. "Dare to rebel for once?" Chapter 2. I was wearing a light blue dress with a small square collar, with straight long hair and light makeup. I was the epitome of a proper lady in the eyes of the elders. But in private, I was ridiculed as a pitiful fool and a soft target. Joshua had sharp eyes and a rebellious look, with a fresh wound on his sharp jawline. His already handsome face now had an added edge of fierceness. I didn't want to engage, but Joshua smirked and lowered his gaze, mocking. "Forget it. I know you wouldn't dare. It's boring." I turned halfway but then turned back. "Who says I wouldn't dare?" Joshua tossed the car keys in his hand. "Come with me?" I gripped my handbag, straightened my back, and walked into the elevator without looking at him. Joshua chuckled and followed me into the elevator. The moment the elevator door closed, Joshua reached out and held my waist. He pulled me straight into his arms, The scent on him was very different from Jack's. The smell of hormones was overwhelming. Even the scent of smoke was more pungent. I felt a bit uncomfortable and coughed lightly a few times. Joshua looked down at me. Spoiled. Your cigarette smell is just too strong. I frowned and tried to push him away. Joshua's grip tightened slightly. Sorry. I'll take a shower after this. A shower won't help. It'll still smell like smoke. I turned my head and wrinkled my nose, trying to distance myself from him. Joshua laughed and suddenly leaned down to kiss me. I'll quit today. Is that okay, baby? I felt a rush of heat on my face. I got engaged to Jack when I was 19. Now, it had been exactly 4 years. Joshua was the first man to kiss me, aside from Jack. When we reached the underground garage, the heat in my body hadn't subsided. Joshua was driving a Hummer. We left the city and drove up a mountain road. The car sped up, finally reaching the mountain peak. My heart was racing, feeling both discomfort and excitement. The sensation was indescribable. Joshua opened the car door and helped me out. Can you stand? My legs were a little weak, but I could still walk. So I pushed his hand away and moved forward. Joshua didn't insist. The observation deck at the mountaintop overlooked the entire city. The lights of countless homes were beneath my feet, and above was the vast starry sky. Endless and infinite. The frustration in my heart seemed to dissipate by more than half. Joshua stood beside me and took out a pack of cigarettes. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he crushed the pack into a ball and tossed it into the trash. I watched his action and, for some reason, couldn't help but laugh. What are you laughing at? Joshua's tone was a little harsh. He turned around and grabbed my chin. Alicia, if you smile like that, I won't be able to resist taking you right here. Chapter 3. I heard that Joshua had a girlfriend almost continuously since middle school. He was fickle, playing around with many girls, but he happened to have a handsome face, and many young girls cried and begged to be with him. I was actually a little nervous, but I pretended to stay calm. Joshua, you don't have any diseases, right? Why? Do you want me to go to the hospital for a full checkup right now? Joshua gripped my chin, leaning down. His heated breath brushed past my ear. Now you're scared. Don't you think it's a little too late for that? His words made me feel genuinely afraid. I lifted my hand and pushed him hard. Joshua, I want to go home. All right. He let go, his tall and muscular body lazily leaning against the railing. His voice was lazy, tinged with mischief. If you want to go home, you can walk back by yourself. I held back my anger and shot him a fierce look. Turning to walk down the mountain, there's been a serial killer on the loose. I heard he escaped up this mountain. The criminal specifically targets pretty girls. First doing something, then dismembering them. Joshua. My footsteps abruptly stopped. A cold mountain breeze blew through, and I was so scared I couldn't think of anything else and ran straight to Joshua. He laughed loudly, then pulled me into his arms. Before I could recover from my shock, Joshua gripped the back of my head and kissed me deeply. At first, I resisted and struggled. I even bit his lip, drawing blood. Alicia. He wiped the blood away and looked at me with a cold gaze. My eyes were red, full of fear and grievance. I want to go home. Joshua suddenly laughed. Go home and continue being a puppet? Alicia, how much can you tolerate? I was stunned. Jack was considered a rising star in the eyes of the elders, a refined and gentle young man, but his true nature, in private, was far from respectable. Everyone urged me to endure, but no one told him not to betray and hurt his future wife. Was it because Jack Fu came from a higher family, and the Chan family was trying to climb up? Why should I think about the bigger picture? Just because the invitations were sent out and the wedding was in 3 days? No one would care if a puppet felt hurt. A child who lost their mother had already lost their father at the same time. No one cared for her. No one had her back. So she had no right to complain. Alicia. Joshua's rough fingertip wiped away the tears at the corner of my eye. When he kissed me again, I heard him whisper softly, "Don't cry. I'll take care of you from now on." Joshua took me back to his place. He lived alone on the top floor of a luxurious apartment in the city center. The top floor, connected by 2 adjacent apartments, was spacious, but also very empty. When we entered, I noticed there were no signs of a woman having been there. He turned off my phone and told me to take a shower. Afterward, we had some red wine on the terrace. I rarely drank, so I didn't even realize how I became after a few glasses. The drunk me was like this. Joshua's bathrobe was pulled open by me. I need to check if you're clean. I mumbled, but my hands didn't stop. At first, Joshua seemed to try to stop me, but I glared at him and swatted his hand away. He relaxed and sprawled out, opening his long legs, half lying down, letting me do whatever I wanted. Joshua's body was truly amazing. His skin was slightly dark, and his muscles were firm and defined, even in a relaxed state. He had a six-pack. I reached out to touch, then moved lower. Alicia. Joshua grabbed my finger. His voice was rough as he said, "Think carefully. If you go one more inch, you'll never be able to turn back." Chapter 4. Are you scared now? Or are you feeling guilty? I straddled his thigh, patting his abs, looking down at him from above. Afraid I'll find out you're not clean? Joshua suddenly laughed. This laugh, however, was different from the ones before. It was pure, full of joy, and came from the depths of his heart. I felt a stirring in my chest. He was really handsome. Alicia, go ahead and check. He released his grip. I struggled to tear my gaze away from his face. Then, inch by inch, I moved my hands down from his stomach. Joshua, it looks kind of cute. Joshua suddenly coughed. In the next moment, he picked me up effortlessly and carried me horizontally. Our bodies sank into the soft bed. Joshua held my hands with his, kissing me roughly and forcefully. Alicia, you'll understand just how scary it can be in a moment. Jack returned to the wedding room at 3 in the morning. The girl who had danced ballet earlier, bold and avant-garde, had changed and come out to dance again. The atmosphere in the private room reached its peak in an instant, but his emotions began to ebb in that very moment. It was already close to 2 o'clock. Not a single call, not a single message from Alicia. Maybe it was the approaching wedding and entering a cage. He had indulged himself and gone a bit too far. Maybe Alicia had heard some rumors, but her temperament was soft, and her family didn't treat her well. She had always been very dependent on him. Just like his friends said, if she got upset, a little coaxing would make it better. He knew he had gone a little overboard, but he didn't feel much unease. No calls or messages didn't matter. Alicia must still be awake, waiting for him to come home. Jack suddenly felt the girl in front of him seemed a little dull. Alicia had also learned ballet as a child, but when she danced ballet, it was never with this kind of expression. How to describe it? Sacred. Yes, sacred. That kind of girl was the one he wanted to marry, the one worthy of being his wife. When the driver dropped him off at the wedding room, the entire house was dark. Jack frowned slightly. Getting out of the car, he felt an inexplicable sense of unease. He entered the main building, passed through the living room, and headed up to the master bedroom. The bedroom door was half open. He went inside and turned on the lights. The warm-toned light filled the room. The huge wedding bed had its blanket neatly laid out, but Alicia wasn't there. Jack's drunkenness suddenly cleared up. He quickly walked into the bathroom and searched through the other rooms. She was nowhere to be found. Finally, he stopped, dialed Alicia's number, but it was turned off. Jack suddenly felt an indescribable irritability. He threw the phone down, tore off his tie, and sat on the sofa. Alicia Chan must really be angry. She had probably gone back to her own home. Yes, she could only go back to the Chan family. Jack suddenly felt at ease. The Chan family would surely urge her to come back immediately. They were looking forward to the wedding. He was tired, his head aching badly. If Alicia were home, she would make him soup, massage him, and run a bath. But she wasn't there tonight. But it didn't matter. She would be back by tomorrow morning at the latest. The Chan family would personally bring her back. And this time, he felt a little guilty, so he would coax her properly. In front of her family, he would give her enough face. He knew she was easy to coax. When I woke up, it was almost noon. The house was very quiet, and Joshua was nowhere to be found. I lay in bed a little longer, then lazily got up. After freshening up, I went to the terrace for some fresh air, but I saw Joshua downstairs in the garden, shirtless, washing a heavy-duty motorcycle. The sunlight was great, and the water sprayed from the high-pressure gun even created a faint rainbow. But what drew the most attention was Joshua. His honey-toned, tight muscles had smooth, flowing lines, and the shape was perfect. He wore a simple pair of jeans, the waistband slightly loose, revealing his strong waist and abdominal lines. It was a kind of wild, energetic sensuality. I couldn't help but think back to last night's craziness. His actions in bed later on truly matched his appearance and persona. I couldn't even remember how many times I nearly passed out. Yet Joshua kept asking, "Alicia, is it cute? Do you like it?" With my cheeks still burning, Joshua turned off the water and casually looked up at the house. Our eyes met, and I felt my face burn even more. I instinctively wanted to back away, but Joshua called my name, "Alicia." He leaned against the motorcycle, casually sweeping his damp hair back. That handsome face was fully revealed. Under the sunlight, he smiled at me, carefree but with a hint of smugness. That triumphant look made me want to grit my teeth in frustration. But deep inside, there was a wave of sweetness and sourness. I shot him a glare and turned to walk back inside. Chapter 5. When I changed and came downstairs, Joshua was already waiting in the dining room. "Are you hungry? Let's eat first." He naturally got up and pulled me to sit next to him. Every dish was exactly to my taste. I was a bit surprised by this, but my appetite wasn't very good. In 3 days, it would be my wedding with Jack. The Chon family had already received the dowry from the Fu family. Over the years, the Chon family's business had relied on the Fu family a lot. In simple terms, it was the Chon family who needed this marriage, not the Fu family. Not me either, but no one in the Chon family cared about these things. "Don't like it?" Joshua noticed I looked a little down. He put his chopsticks down too. "Want me to take you out to eat?" "Joshua." I poked at the porridge in my bowl, lost in thought. "In 3 days, it will be my wedding. Are you still going back?" Joshua looked at me with a blank expression. "Alicia, do you really like him that much?" I couldn't help but let out a self-deprecating smile. Maybe I liked him once, in the beginning, when we both poured our hearts into it. How could there not have been real feelings back then? But later, when one of us got tired and bored, how could we not feel it? "Joshua." I looked up at him, my eyes slightly red, but still smiling. "Can you let me be happy these next 3 days?" Joshua seemed to want to smile too, maybe even light a cigarette, but he couldn't find his cigarette pack. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. After a while, he slowly spoke. "What about after 3 days, Alicia? After 3 days, will you watch me go back and marry him? Just pretend it was all a dream? Don't you feel happy, Joshua?" I asked quietly, but my voice lacked confidence. This time, Joshua smiled. "Alicia, of course. I'm happy. Then isn't that a win-win situation?" I tried to act carefree. "A win-win," Joshua murmured softly, his gaze fixed on my face. But the smile on his face turned into that same one from before. "Alicia, I'll listen to you as long as you're happy." That night, Joshua took me out for a ride on his motorcycle. We breezed through the entire city, unconcerned by anyone else, hidden under helmets. We didn't need to worry about anything. I had never felt my soul so free. When I waved my arms and yelled out loud without any care for my image, the Alicia wrapped in layers of rules and expectations seemed to break free from a cocoon that had been restricting her. And I didn't know that, while I enjoyed my last bit of freedom. Jack, my fiancé, who had long since stopped caring about me, would become agitated due to my disappearance for a day and night, when he finally called again and found that my phone was still off. Jack immediately left the wedding room and went out to meet friends in the late hours. The girl who danced ballet earlier was named Carolina. After Jack lost interest and left halfway, Carolina thought he wouldn't come after her. But unexpectedly, Jack showed up at her school to pick her up in the middle of the night. As Carolina left the dorm, a wicked thought crossed her mind. Jack was generous, but he was about to get married. Carolina could feel that Jack's interest in her was just a temporary fling. One day, he would toss her aside like an old shoe. But Carolina knew she would never find a man with better conditions than Jack. She wanted to make a big score and live the rest of her life comfortably, with wealth and no worries. Even if she couldn't have a child, she could at least get a huge sum of money out of it. Tonight, it seemed like fate was on her side. She was in her ovulation period. When she left the dorm, Carolina pulled out a condom she had prepared earlier. She punctured it, one by one, probably because she was still a student. Jack wasn't cautious with her. This was the opportunity she had to seize. After a few rounds of drinks, Jack still didn't seem to be in the mood. Jack, did your fiancée cause a scene when you got home last night? Jack glanced at the man lounging on the sofa. Did she dare cause a scene with me? Well, I thought she would cry when she saw you with that girl, and you'd definitely fight when you got home. I didn't expect her temper to be so good. She just let it slide. Jack suddenly set his drink down. Alicia came by last night? Yeah. I ran into her when I went out to take a call. We spoke for a bit. She cried? She looked like she did. Her eyes were really red. Jack suddenly felt a lot of his displeasure melt away. So she was really jealous and upset. That's why she had been hiding and turned off her phone. At that moment, Jack felt much better and even found himself liking Carolina more. This girl smelled so good tonight. Her perfume was driving him wild. Jack pulled her into his arms, and Carolina straddled him. Mr. Fu, you're not going to leave me tonight, are you? He pinched Carolina's cheek. This is the last time. Let's have some fun. Why is it the last time? Because I'm getting married the day after tomorrow. So what if you're getting married? Won't you still come out and have fun? Jack chuckled lightly, wrapping his arms around Carolina and standing up. Once I'm married, I won't play around anymore. He looked back at the room full of people. Did you all hear that? He laughed with a bit of wildness but with an undertone of serious amusement. From now on, I'll only have my wife, no other women. Chapter 06. When Jack and Carolina were being reckless, Joshua took me to a small competition, the racers. Each one brought their girlfriend. Naturally, Joshua brought me along. Joshua, why are you breaking the rules this time? Yeah, Joshua, you never let women in before. Joshua lifted his helmet and pretended to strike. The person screamed and hid behind me. Sis, save me! I was momentarily stunned and instinctively about to explain, but Joshua gave me a glance, reached out, and pulled me over. Don't mess with her. She has thin skin. Joshua, so you do care for her beauty? Well, it's because sis is too beautiful. All right, the race is about to start. Joshua ignored the others and put on my helmet for me. The car may go a little fast later. If you're scared, just signal to stop. I'm not scared. Joshua looked at me, smirking casually. Then if you are scared, hold on to me. I'm not scared. I didn't scream once earlier. Joshua didn't say more, just chuckled. When the race began, I realized what we did earlier was just child's play. As the speed picked up and the car drifted around sharp corners, I finally screamed and clung to Joshua's waist in fear. Alicia, are you scared? In the wind, Joshua shouted at me. I was terrified, but I still closed my eyes and yelled loudly. I'm not scared. Joshua's laughter was wild and carefree, echoing in the fierce wind. Alicia, hold me tighter, tighter. I obediently tightened my grip on him, and the car's speed immediately hit its maximum. No surprise, Joshua came in first. When we stopped at the finish line, he parked the car and carried me out. My legs were too weak to stand, so he held me close and took off my helmet. In that moment, the bright lights all went out. The only thing above us was the distant, faint starry sky. Joshua lowered his head and kissed me deeply. Alicia, let's elope. Do you dare? His eyes were so intense, with a wild spark. The scar on his chin made him look even more untamed at this moment. I could feel the burning affection in his gaze. Maybe it was love. No one could resist his charm, not even the most timid and obedient Alicia. For a split second, I really wanted to nod. Just leave everything behind and run away. Even if we had to live in a wandering, homeless way, it would be better than being controlled like this. But reality was so cruel. The last remaining shred of reason still held me back. I didn't respond. Instead, I stood on my tiptoes and kissed him. Joshua, I want you. The stars at the mountain top still had a faint glow, but at the foot of the mountain, it was already a deep, dark color. Everything was silent. Only from the car parked under the tree did soft whimpers occasionally emerge. The back seat was spacious. Joshua was sitting casually in the car seat, his clothes scattered. One hand was protecting my head. But soon, I lost all my strength. I collapsed onto his chest, soft and drenched. Joshua chuckled and brushed away my wet hair from my forehead. Can't take it anymore? I was too weak to speak, but my mind was muddled, thinking, that adorable little thing, how could it grow to be so terrifying? Day by day? I felt like I was burning up, sweating and trembling. Joshua turned over and pinned me beneath him, his tall and sturdy body, powerful and forceful. Only then did I faintly realize that I was attracted to strength. I liked this feeling of absolute dominance, liked Joshua's assertive and powerful nature, but he would always be soft on me. We were once just acquaintances, living in the capital. We had only met a few times. The closest time we spent together was these 2 short days. But he somehow gave me an overwhelming sense of security, even though he had a face that looked like a playboy, even though he had a reputation for being reckless. But somehow, he made me feel I could trust him. I closed my eyes, surrendering everything to my senses. That night, both Joshua and I gave in completely. I don't remember when it ended. I only remember when everything calmed down. Wrapped in Joshua's coat, I sat in his arms. We quietly embraced, sharing gentle kisses, waiting for the dawn, waiting for everything to return to the starting point. Chapter 7. The last day was spent at Joshua's house. When I woke up, it was already 2 p.m. I took a long, relaxing bath. As I stood in front of the sink, ready to blow dry my hair, Joshua pushed open the door and walked in. He didn't say anything, just took the hairdryer from my hands. As my hair dried halfway, I seemed to suddenly burst into tears. Joshua put down the hairdryer, cupped my face, and kissed the tear at the corner of my eye. In the mirror, I saw the faded red string on his left wrist. It was tied in a King Kong knot. It looked familiar. Have you been wearing this red string for a long time? Yeah, about 4 years. Which girl gave it to you? Joshua smiled. I'm superstitious. Got it from the temple. It's a protective charm. I think I had one like that too, but I don't know where I lost it. Alicia. Joshua lowered his head, his forehead lightly touching mine. Are you going back? Yeah. I didn't dare look up at him, only gently touched the scar on his chin. How did you get this injury? Racing injuries are normal. Be more careful next time. I pretended to laugh casually. After all, you're so handsome. A scar would be a shame. Is it only my face that's handsome? My body is good too. I'm also great in bed. Lots of tricks. I guess all those past relationships had their perks. Alicia. Yeah, I've never been in a relationship before. Joshua seemed reluctant to explain, frowning slightly. I know you might not believe me, but I've never been interested in women. Why? Because they're noisy. Joshua lowered his gaze to me, brushing away the tear hanging from my eyelashes. Alicia, I'll be waiting for you outside the chapel tomorrow. Don't worry. I won't stalk you. If you don't show up, I promise I will never appear in front of you again. Joshua, I wanted to say, don't do this. Others already look at you with suspicion. If you keep acting like this, your reputation will be ruined. After all, I'm engaged to Jack. Everyone knows I'm going to marry him. Alicia, we only live once. I hope you live freely, without restraint. When I returned to the marriage house, Jack quickly came back as well. He still smelled of alcohol, his face weary and tired. He took off his suit jacket and casually tossed it at the entrance. Alicia. He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw a tenderness I hadn't seen in a long time. Wifey. He walked toward me, squatted down, and held my hand. Tomorrow is our wedding. From now on, can we live a good life together? I looked at the man in front of me. I couldn't deny that I had liked him once. I had hoped for more from him. In the Chan family, I wasn't valued, never received affection. I had hoped my future husband would love me wholeheartedly. I had imagined my married life with Jack, imagining us growing old together, loving each other. But unfortunately, fantasy is just fantasy. I gently pulled my hand away. Go take a shower and rest. What about you? I want to rest too. We need to wake up early tomorrow. With that, I stood up and walked out. The car from the Chan family is coming soon. According to the rules, I have to stay at my parents' house tonight. I'll take you out. Jack was like the most caring husband in the world, personally escorting me to the car. I sat in the car and watched him stand in the night, watching as my car disappeared into the distance. I didn't know what the point of this deep affection was, if it was all just an act. Suddenly, my phone rang a few times, breaking my train of thought. I opened it to find a friend request from an unknown number. After accepting, the person quickly sent me a few photos and videos. Miss Chan, I didn't want to bother you, but Jack's actions are too harsh, too ruthless. I was just after his money, but now, I've been fired. My reputation is ruined, and I have nothing left. Miss Chan, Jack said he doesn't love you anymore, that he married you because you were pure. You're his first and only woman. Believe me, after you two get married, he won't settle down, because Miss Chan, you can't be like me. I finished reading the message the girl sent and clicked on the photos. Just a glance, and I quickly shut my hand, trembling. The images were disgusting beyond words. In Jack's eyes, he thought if he paid, he could do anything he wanted with those girls. Should I thank him that, even though he doesn't love me, he still treats me like a wife and hasn't done something so revolting to me? Chapter 8. On the day of the wedding, I woke up very early, and I had completely made up my mind. After getting ready, I took a few documents from the safe in my room. Then, I knocked on my father and stepmother's door. My biological mother came from a scholarly family, but she passed away shortly after giving birth to me. She left me a small portion of Chan family shares, and some jewelry and accessories that my grandfather's family had gifted her when she married into the family. I kept the pair of sheep-fat jade bangles that my mother cherished the most and always wore. The rest, I gave to them. The Chan family raised me for 23 years, so these things are my way of repaying the Chan family's kindness. Both my father and stepmother were surprised. They had long hoped to get their hands on the inheritance my mother left for me, but I had always refused. I felt like it was the last thing my mother left me, and I needed to keep it safe. But now, I understood. My mother had passed away from depression. It was clear that the Chan family was not a good place to be. Being a daughter of the Chan family wasn't a blessing either. But, as they always said, since I enjoyed 20 years of wealth and protection, I should naturally make sacrifices for the Chan family. Now that I had given them everything, I owed the Chan family nothing. The dowry from the Fu family was never in my hands. The business support Fu family gave to the Chan family benefited my father and stepmother, and my stepmother's son. So, I didn't owe the Fu family either. As for the upcoming pile of debts, let the Fu and Chan families sort it out. My father didn't know my plans and was quite pleased, praising me. You're getting married and finally understand the importance of giving back to your parents and elders. My stepmother also smiled warmly. From now on, you'll be the young lady of the Fu family. Things will be different. Your mother would be comforted in the afterlife. I smiled and didn't say much. Remember, once you're married, you can't act childish anymore. You've been turning off your phone and disappearing these past few days. It's too rebellious. Luckily, Jack hasn't gotten upset. If he did, the wedding would be off, and you wouldn't have time to cry. After you get married, focus on winning Jack's heart. Help the Chan family more. When your maternal family is doing well, your life will be better. For the first time, my father's eyes showed clear satisfaction. In his eyes, I was perhaps his most successful commodity sold, not his biological daughter. Not a living, flesh and blood person who can feel pain and sadness. The wedding was about to start in 30 minutes. I took off my shawl. The wedding dress was beautiful and intricate, revealing my shoulders and back. The makeup artist smiled and said, "Miss Chan, let me cover up that mark on your neck." She pointed to the hickey on my neck. "You and Mr. Fu really are affectionate." I shook my head. "No need. It's fine like this." The makeup artist adjusted my veil and skirt. Then, She handed me the bouquet. I took the flowers and stood up. The pair of jade bangles my mother loved were now on my wrist. As I stood up, they clinked together with a soft sound. The heavy fog in my heart seemed to part, like an invisible hand had swept it away. The bright sunlight shone through the gap. I knew, from this moment on, everything would be different. As I walked out, my phone vibrated gently. It was a message from Joshua. "Alicia, I'm waiting for you." I didn't reply, just put my phone back in my bag and stepped out of the makeup room. From afar, I saw Jack, and he saw me. I could see the amazement and joy in his eyes. The groom, looking like a handsome jade tree in the spring breeze, looked even more dashing today. I stopped, and for a moment, it felt like I was back to the year we got engaged. It was the anniversary of my mother's death. Jack accompanied me to the temple. I personally braided a red string with a King Kong knot and had the temple's monk bless it. I offered it to the Buddha for 3 days and nights, happily wanting to give it to Jack. But he didn't believe in such things. And it seemed like he didn't appreciate my intentions either. He simply looked at it and didn't intend to wear it. I was a little disappointed, but I understood that most men didn't like these things. It was normal. I shouldn't force others to cater to my preferences. That red string was later hung on the temple's wish tree. It was hung alongside my wish tag. Even now, I still clearly remember the wish I made that day. I hope I can find someone who truly loves me and will be with me until old age. My vision suddenly blurred, and Jack's face became indistinct. I had truly liked him before. The feelings I had back then were real. So, I don't regret it. But now, I've truly let go. This obedient girl, whoever wants to take on that role, can do so. Someone who has never had a rebellious phase. When they finally want to rebel completely, it's a little scary. Chapter 9. When Jack walked over to my side holding the groom's bouquet, the smile on his face froze in a comical way. He saw the hickeys on my neck, patchy, varying in depth, and he remembered that we hadn't been together for a long time. His expression became bizarre, slowly twisting, and even the bouquet nearly fell from his hands. "Alicia, what is this? What did you do? Alicia, who have you been with these past 3 days?" His voice was hoarse, and anger was bubbling in his eyes. I couldn't help but laugh lightly. "I was just trying something new outside. What are you mad about? Or, is it that only you can do it, and I can't? Trying something new?" Jack murmured the words, and suddenly, he violently threw the bouquet down. The crowd around us was startled by the sudden change and fell into silence. The elders of the Chan and Fu families turned their attention to us. I raised an eyebrow, a calm smile on my face. "Yeah, didn't you try it? Seems like you're addicted." "Huh, Alicia." I took a slow step back. "I tried it too. After trying it, I realized you're pretty boring. Not as exciting as him." So, I placed the bouquet on the ground, my smile deepening as I looked at him. "Jack, I'm not marrying you anymore." The moment I said those words, a ringing buzzed in my ears. Then, it felt like I had gone deaf. The whole world went silent as if death had fallen over everything. But after that silence, the world became vibrant again. I felt the last layer of my cocoon completely peel off. My body and soul were now completely free. I turned and walked out. The expressions of the Chan family were priceless. My father and stepmother seemed completely stunned, standing there frozen. It wasn't until I had walked far away that my father's angry shout reached me. But I didn't turn back. The intricate wedding dress skirt was gathered in my hands. My high heels had long been secretly swapped for comfortable sneakers. I started to run, crossing the neatly manicured green lawn. I passed through archways adorned with rose vines. When I finally ran through the large gate, I stopped and looked back for a moment. The loud, chaotic crowd seemed like another ridiculous world. Once I left through this gate, I would never look back. Joshua wasn't driving. He was rarely seen in a black suit, leaning against a heavy motorcycle. This was the first time I had seen him in a suit. In my mind, the word suit beast instantly popped up. I had really gone astray. At this moment, all I could think of was how badly I wanted to be with him while he wore the suit. His hair seemed especially styled, looking sharp. It was like he was the one getting married today. Like a groom, I stopped, stood under the sunlight, and looked at him. And he saw me too. The moment he saw me, he immediately stood up straight. The usually rebellious man nervously pressed his lips together. His eyes were filled with ecstasy, disbelief. But more than that, they were full of tender affection. Alicia. He softly called my name. With long strides, he quickly closed the distance between us. My wedding dress skirt spread out, floating like layers of waves in the air. The surrounding green trees swirled, their patches of shade spreading across the bright blue sky. Joshua, my head feels dizzy. Let me down. I almost screamed and clung to him, trembling as I begged. He obediently stopped. But when he stopped, he fiercely kissed me. Alicia, do you know, I didn't sleep all night last night. Now I finally understand what it means for time to drag on like years. Joshua held me tightly, as if he would lose me if he let go. From now on, not a single minute can be spent outside my sight. Didn't you say you wanted me to live freely? You just enjoy your freedom, and I'll follow you. Always follow me, always follow you. You won't get tired, won't get bored, won't want to try something new. I've kept myself pure for 26 years, waiting for this day. Only a fool would do such a stupid thing. So that day, was it your first time? I was surprised, because that night, he really didn't seem like a first-timer. Was it exceptional, with long-lasting stamina? Did it impress you? Joshua said it proudly, though there was a hint of bashfulness. I couldn't help but laugh. Joshua leaned down and kissed me again. You have no idea how hard it was for me to endure just so I wouldn't disappoint you. To make sure you were comfortable. Well, then, I'll reward you tonight. I tilted my head up and kissed him. But you have to wear this suit. Just as Jack came running out, he saw me sitting on the back of Joshua's motorcycle. He was so angry that he was almost jumping with rage. But I calmly gave him the middle finger. The roar of the motorcycle echoed as we sped away, and neither Joshua nor I seemed to care whether Jack followed or not. He took me through the bustling city, and after an unknown amount of time, he suddenly stopped again. It was a very unique private custom studio. Joshua led me inside, where a beautiful woman named Laura handed me a handmade wedding dress. It was simple and elegant, with delicate ballet elements. I instantly loved it. Joshua urged me to change into the wedding dress. When I changed, Laura helped me take down my hair and tied it into a neat bun. When I came out, dressed up again, the way Joshua looked at me made Laura laugh. Is it pretty? I twirled around, holding the skirt, and made a perfect ballet pose, smiling at Joshua. He stared at me, his eyes suddenly filled with tears. Joshua, what's wrong? I was a bit surprised. After a long while, he seemed to have calmed his emotions. Alicia, do you remember how long it's been since you last danced? I froze. To be precise, since I got engaged to Jack. My father and stepmother wouldn't let me dance anymore. They said that once I married into the Fu family, I should become a proper young lady. Performing on stage was no longer suitable for my status. With a few words, they casually cut off my dreams and aspirations. At that time, the 19-year-old me, used to obedience and being well-behaved, summoned all my courage to ask for a chance to continue. After being rejected, I just hid away and cried, and then I passively accepted my fate. Later, during the time when my relationship with Jack was the best, I once asked him if I could still continue dancing ballet. What did Jack say? Isn't it better to just live as a well-maintained noblewoman? Ballet is so hard. Look at your feet. They're deformed. Don't you think it looks ugly? At that time, I really liked him. I only saw him, and I only wanted to be perfect in his eyes. I was no different from any other girl. And of course, I felt the same way. For a long time after, I didn't even dare to let Jack see my feet. Alicia, do you know? Just now, you were glowing. Tears fell from my eyes in that moment, and Joshua held me tightly. I want you to be the dazzling Alicia, just like the first time I saw you dance, shining brightly and unstoppable. You've seen me dance? To be precise, I've watched every single one of your performances. Chapter 10. Joshua and I went to many places. We didn't have a wedding, but it felt like we were married on a journey. Laura made many beautiful dresses for me. When we left that day, Joshua took them all, It seemed like he especially enjoyed seeing me dressed up beautifully, going to every beautiful place in the world. I don't know when he started preparing, or how long he prepared, and perhaps I'll never know the depth of his intentions. So, what were his feelings when he was preparing all of this? I don't dare to imagine, but fate was kind, and in the end, I didn't miss out. By the time we were preparing to return to the capital, it was already deep autumn. 2 months had passed since the wedding, but clearly, the storm wasn't over. The Fu family was venting their anger on the Chan family, suppressing their business everywhere, and Jack's reaction went beyond what I imagined. He accepted the one and only media interview. In the interview, he said, "My wife Alicia was maliciously manipulated, which led her to make foolish decisions. She is pure and innocent, a well-known obedient girl in the capital. As for that young man Joshua, everyone knows his reputation. I don't know what means he used to deceive my wife into eloping with him. I will never let this go. But for my wife Alicia, I am still willing to give her one last chance. As long as she returns, the Fu family's doors will still be open to her. I, Jack Fu, will not hold this against her." His deep affection was truly moving. When these words were spoken, Joshua, who was already notorious, became the target of even more criticism. The public was convinced that I, the obedient girl, had been deceived by Joshua, and Jack was willing to give me a chance to return, which was seen as something I should be grateful for. If it were the old me, I would have been terrified, afraid of the damage to my reputation, afraid I wouldn't be able to wash off the stains, afraid of being criticized and cursed, afraid of bringing shame to my deceased mother. But now, I no longer cared about these so-called superficial things. When I returned to the capital, I went to see Jack. "Do you remember Carolina?" I went straight to the point. Jack's expression changed immediately. How could he not remember? That woman had tried to trap him with a fake pregnancy, thinking she could use a child to hold on to him. Such despicable, pathetic tactics and traps were, to be honest, something he had seen countless times before, so he easily saw through it. Not only did Carolina fail miserably, but Jack also used a bit of leverage to have her expelled from school. This matter had been swept under the rug. Jack was somewhat surprised that I knew about it. If you don't want the elders and media to know about your disgraceful past with her, then stop letting the media spread rumors that harm Joshua's reputation. I handed Jack one of the photos. "You wouldn't want these photos to be seen, would you?" Jack's face showed unmistakable anger and surprise. "So you're doing this just for Joshua? Alicia, do you care about him that much?" "I'm just stating the truth. Joshua didn't manipulate me. He didn't deceive me. Every decision I made because I wanted to." "And what about your reputation, Alicia?" "I don't care." "What about your mother? Don't you care about her?" I stood up, smiled, and said, "My mother probably wouldn't want me to be a puppet like obedient girl. But Alicia, a man like Joshua, can you rely on him? Do you know how reckless his past was? Can it be worse than yours? Your reputation is good. But what's the reality, Alicia? You're still too naive. All men are the same. They all get tired and bored eventually. So, we just have to turn a blind eye and endure forever? What if one day Joshua does the same?" "He won't." "How are you so sure he won't?" "I was very sure. Maybe it's the red string he's been wearing on his wrist for 4 years. Maybe it's the diary he keeps in his study, filled with pages upon pages of my name. Maybe it's the hundreds of photos he's taken of me, watching my performances, capturing every moment. Maybe it's the way he looks at me, so focused and sincere every time. Maybe it's that he gave me the courage to start pursuing my dreams. A good partner makes the other person better and shine brightly. Jack just wanted me to be a good wife, a good mother, trapped in a beautiful house. Nothing more than a pretty ornament. But Joshua made me into a carefree yet confident person, a child full of joy. I just run forward, and he will always be there behind me. The year Joshua and I registered our marriage, Carolina, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly did something big. Maybe life had been too hard for her. Maybe she couldn't let go of the deep resentment toward Jack. Carolina used those photos to exchange for a large sum of money. Then, she disappeared. Overnight. Those photos spread all over the capital. Jack's reputation was ruined. He was abandoned by his family, and someone else took his place. And after those who cleared up the timeline, my and Joshua's reputations naturally began to reverse. But through all of this, Joshua and I remained with the same attitude, laughing it off and no longer caring. On the day we received our marriage certificate, I took Joshua to the temple. There was a forever burning light in the temple that I had lit for my mother. Joshua and I knelt before her spirit tablet, and we stayed there for a long time. Later, after I got up, Joshua told me to go out first. He said he had a few words to say to my mother. I didn't know what he wanted to say, but I let him be. While he was gone, I went to the wish tree. I found the wish tag I had personally hung there all those years ago. The red string had been taken by Joshua, but the wish tag was still there. But I noticed that there was another tag next to mine. It was tied to mine with a red silk thread. The handwriting on it was bold and firm, and I instantly recognized it as Joshua's. He wrote 2 sentences. Alicia, can I see you sooner? I held that wish tag in my hands, and tears suddenly rushed to my eyes. The temple was filled with bustling visitors, and the sound was overwhelming. I heard someone call my name. Turning around, I saw Joshua standing on the steps. He was dressed in white, black pants, and looked incredibly handsome. The moment he saw me, his eyes softened with a gentle smile. I smiled through my tears and waved at him. Joshua, I see you.